Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Leppy Duels Week 6, once again brought to you by JarV Media. I'm your host, Jacob Arvidson, and I'm excited to have all of you with us this week, especially our brand new viewers. If that's you, please take a quick second down below to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Thank you. Here's how the show works. In a moment, you will meet our 4 distinguished guests. Each of those guests will go 1v1 versus the other 3 contestants. Within each duel, each contestant will have 1 minute to deliver their points on the assigned debate topic, along with an additional 20 seconds to respond to their opponent's comments. After that, I, as the host, will determine a winner of each duel, and the first one to fill up their scoring bar first wins the episode. Simple enough, let's meet this week's guests. First up, he's the Waco Annual Charity Open winning caddy for Miss Kristen Tatar. Give it up for Seth Fendley. Next up, he's my co-host on the Caddy Chat podcast and co-owner at Freshwood Disc Golf, Mr. Josh Wood. Third, she's the Leppy Duels champion returning from Week 5, the MVP Disc Sports Women's Team Captain, Jennifer Sawyer. And finally, rounding out the cast this week, he's the owner at Wolfpack Discs and the brand manager at Great Lakes Disc, Mr. Brian Papa Wolf Frawley. Thanks for joining us this week, guys. Let's get into it. First things first, the Waco Annual Charity Open was this past weekend. It was the big Elite Series stop for all of the top pros. What was your guys' takeaways? What was a positive? What was a negative that you saw this past weekend during the tournament? Seth, Josh, you're up. Seth, you're first.
Yeah, so I'm going to say on the positive side, the FPO division was really looking strong. And the fact that Ella, was leading literally until the last putt in round 3 was quite the feat for her. And it wasn't your normal cast of characters in the mix outside of Kristen winning. We had Own, we had Deanne Carey, we had Sarah Holcomb moving up 5 spots to take the 4th spot. I think that seeing the parity in the FPO division is what we've been looking for, and it's a great positive to take away from the Waco tournament. On the negative side, I do think, though, when you want to think about the product of professional disc golf, the lack of dominant players was really somewhat of a negative, right? Like Eagle was very far down there. Ricky wasn't able to play. Paige and Katrina, both outside of the top 10. Like, those are things that the fans want to see. They want to see them competing, even if they're not winning. And so I think that was sort of the negative for me when I think about Waco.
Okay, I like it. Josh, what do you got for us?
Yeah, on the positive side for me, the tour is back. I know I've talked about it a lot in regard to not loving Vegas and the Memorial on those types of courses. I was happy to be back in some woods, happy to see some shot shapes, happy to see some great golf. So the positive for me is, to me now it feels like the tour is back. And actually, on the negative side, for me, it's that Ricky wasn't there. Not just because he lost me points in our little bet. But I love to see him play, and I think he would have added a great element. We have seen some great golf already this year. A lot of young guys coming up and a lot of competition, a lot of tight battles. And I wish Ricky was there to partake and to see how he was doing. I can't wait for Ricky to get back.
All right, so a little bit of differentiation between you two there. Why should I take you over Josh, Seth?
Yeah, so I think when we think about the FPO division specifically, like that is that's something that we want to see more people invested in. When we're talking about like when the tour started, I mean, technically the tour officially started in Vegas. Whether or not you count it as a real tournament, that's a personal opinion. And then as far as the negative side of things, we both said Ricky. But at the end of the day, I took it a little bit further. I gave us a bit more of a storyline as to why there were negatives coming out of that. And I think that ultimately lends itself to my side of the argument.
Okay, fair enough. Josh, what do you got for us?
Yeah, in regard to the negatives of there not being any pull-away winners, I actually thought that was a positive. I love seeing the competition tight. As long as it's not a bunch of 16 and 17 unders. I mean, we were right there in the 10 to 13 range every day. It was tight. It was exciting. A lot of players we don't always see on coverage, getting on coverage. So on the FPO and the MPO, I thought that lack of a pull-away winner was actually an exciting aspect of the weekend.
You guys tossing it up to me here in the opening debate. I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Seth. I think the FPO thing is important. Missing Paige and Katrina outside of the top 10 and having names that are. It's cool to see them at the top of the leaderboard, but I think you're exactly right. I think the people do want to see our top names making a push for the top, besides just Kristen. So for that reason, Seth takes the win in duel number 1, sends us to duel number 2 between Brian and Jen. You guys are debating Eveliina. We watched her have more struggles on the putting green. What's your guys' take on it? And you can kind of go wherever you want with this. Jen, you're up first.
I have to preface this by saying Eveliina is me and I am Eveliina. I have been personally struggling with the yips for the last 2 years. And when you're on that bigger stage, it seems more important. You know, I'm a local regional pro. I'm not a top touring pro. What you have to keep in mind is the mental health aspect of it. When in 2020, this has been a much bigger conversation. Is if you look at Simone Biles in the Olympics, she had the twisties, which is a separation of your mental awareness and your physical awareness. I think that's what's happening, and that's what I feel like is happening to me. And I think that we need some kindness, and the fact that it seemed like Paul was helping her with her stroke. I had a very similar situation. I've had lots of good conversations with Katrina Allen about my own yip problem. And I think we just need to be a little bit more forgiving. And once she gets past that, she's going to be phenomenal.
All right, Brian, where are you going to go with this?
You know, I appreciate your honest take, Jennifer. I think that's good to be who you are and to be raw. When it comes to a touring professional that's 4th in Circle 1 rate, getting there and then 75th or something and completing that task, that's a challenge. That's hard to watch. And what's worse, like you said, are the comments that we see that are coming out. You know, the just absolutely ripping her grip or her stance or the amount of times it takes to get it in the basket. Like, that doesn't make disc golf look good. I love seeing Paul help. That was great. My thing is her birdie rate is 39th on tour. So 39th on tour is not good enough, no matter how you want to look at it, for a female athlete or any athlete that's paid in the top, you know, probably 10% of their field. I really think that this is hurting her in the long run. And to use the great Randy Moss's quote, straight cash. She's losing straight cash. So I hope that she gets it figured out. I hope that she can find that balance between, you know, putting too much pressure on herself and being successful. But at the end of the day, she's losing cash, and I hope she gets that fixed for that reason.
All right, so you guys took similar routes to this question in the way you answered it. Tell me, I guess, let's take this a step further. What's a solution for the putting issue? Because we can obviously see that something's wrong when she gets to the green. So what's the solution for Eveliina, Jen?
I think solution is coaching, but beyond just physical disc golf coaching is mental health preparedness. I know the European countries, Sweden specifically, they have a very good system for coaching their athletes, and that's great for them. We don't really have that over here, but as soon as she can get past that mind-hand connection, she's going to be a lot better. And I think that that's going to be more on the mental side than the physical side. Yeah, we drive for show, putt for dough. She is missing out on everything. She knows it. And unfortunately, that's making it worse for her. And I think once she gets over that mental hurdle, that's going to be better for her.
All right, Brian, what's the solution?
You know, I think Jen's right in the fact that it's a longer fix than, or a bigger problem that can't really be solved by a short fix. But I know that she is playing this weekend, so my suggestion to her would be go everything different. So if you put your right foot on your mini most of the time, go put your left foot. Change up to a straddle putt. Go down to a knee, even if it's ridiculous. Turn parallel to the basket. Do something just to give yourself a chance, because right now it ain't working. Give yourself a chance, and maybe plan out that future attack plan on both the green and the mind.
I like that, Brian. I like that you're setting a plan in motion. I think that's important, and not looking at it at we need results right now, but baby steps, slowly chipping away at it and getting better as the season goes on for the long term. Jen, I'm going to give you this duel. I love that you were raw at the beginning and brought us into your own struggles and connected that with Eveliina. I think that's important here, and I think a lot of people are overlooking at it from their couch and saying, hey, fix your grip or fix whatever. When at the same time, so many people on the local level, especially in the amateur ranks, they do the exact same thing every week. So I think that's important. I'm glad you brought that up. Jen takes the win here in duel number 2. Sends us to duel number 3, Seth and Jen. Seth, you are going to be up here. The House of Discs. We heard that term kind of for the first time last week. Big conglomeration, joint effort. Seth, you are a big part of that at Latitude 64, kind of bringing the whole trilogy thing under one umbrella and moving forward in that regard. What's your take on it? What does it do for manufacturers going forward? How does it change the game?
Yeah, so the House of Disc terminology has existed since last year. I think that it obviously blew up a little bit more with the knowledge of it being a little bit more stateside as opposed to European. That being said, I think that there's two sort of things that we take away from this. One is that there's going to be better options, right? When you have all of these different companies, disc companies, that you can't call them manufacturers because they've all been manufactured in the same place. But when you have all these disc companies working together, you get better options because everything's more streamlined. There's more resources to work together. And that leads me to my second point, which is really just better support. One of the things that we've known from the beginning is that Dynamic Disc has been very customer service focused, and they don't ever let that slip. And that's something that you're going to see expand even more so now that we have more resources committed to that globally. And so I think those two things, more options and more support, are really the two key takeaways from this.
All right, Jen, how does House of Disc change the manufacturing landscape?
Seth makes great points. And my first thought when I read this was, is the trilogy complete, or is the trilogy no more? And regardless of the answer, disc golf itself will benefit the most from this deal. Dynamic Discs is coming to the table with a distribution infrastructure, and Latitude is coming with the manufacturing expertise. And I believe this will change the landscape of how, maybe more specifically, European companies break into the US market, but also how smaller companies look at getting a bigger market share in the US market. So take, for instance, smaller companies. We're not going to call them manufacturers like Seth said, but for instance, Essential Discs is a small company here out of Lansing. The typical business model and practice for producing discs, you produce them, sell them at local shops, donating discs to local clubs, getting local, players to throw and promote your product. It may turn out to be an outdated model under this new umbrella model in terms of methods of getting discs into players' hands. And if the House of Discs is planning to expand their umbrella companies, it could give the opportunity to these new companies or inspire other manufacturers or companies to band together in a similar fashion, all of which really provides the disc golf community more options to reach those players. And that's what's important here. And I think it's great that DD is coming out and doing this.
All right, so Seth, you kind of harped on the combining of resources. Jen, you spoke about the conglomerations potentially forming down the road from other manufacturers or smaller companies. Kind of both of you expand on that for me to determine who's going to win this duel. Go for it, Seth.
Yeah, so I think that the thing that you have with what I talked about are all things that are knowns. right? These are all things that we know are going to happen, right? We know that there's going to be more options because of everyone coming together. We know that the support is going to get better because, yet again, it's all working together. The thing that Jen is talking about are all hypotheticals. And so while they seem great and I would love to see them happen as much as everyone else, what I'm bringing are sort of the known facts. What Jen's bringing is what she's hoping to see. And so I think that ultimately the decision comes down to sort of twofold. One, are we going based off of known facts or hopefulness? And two, are we going based off of me getting told that I'm a homer and talking about something that I have insider knowledge on, or Jen getting to talk about it from the outside? Because I got called out for that the last time, and I couldn't really help where I was coming from. I got given this topic, and I have to talk about it.
I love that you're a homer. It would be awkward if you weren't here, Seth. Jen, what do you got?
Well, I don't think the House of Disc is coming into this deal with a hope of any sort. I think the intent is to broaden this let's disc along mentality, where we're not just singling out other manufacturers. We're going to work together and all produce a good companies, good sales, and good business together. And I think it's not a hope. It may be an outsider's opinion, but we don't make business decisions on hope. No one does. And I don't think Jeremy is doing that.
Fair enough. I think you guys both bring up great points. Seth, obviously you've got the insider information, which is very helpful here. And you did present the known facts. That's very important. Jen, maybe a little hopeful, maybe a little long-term looking, but the conglomeration aspect, it does answer the question in the fact that how does this change the manufacturing landscape? It promotes conglomeration and gives us a business model of how it can happen successfully. So I think both of you guys answered the question properly. I am going to give the win to Seth, though. The insider knowledge gives you a little bit of an edge here. So you will take the win here in duel number 3. Sends us to duel number 4. Josh and Brian, you guys are on the table. Does being a touring pro or not being a touring pro, does it change? Does it help at all when it comes to commentary in disc golf? Josh, you are up.
I believe that at this point in our sport, it's absolutely necessary for somebody in the booth to be a touring pro, or at least have touring pro experience. It's one thing if you're an 80-year-old sport and you've got these super fans who know enough about the sport and have played the courses that they can do commentary. But in our sport right now, as young as we are, I think it's essential that somebody there can tell you what these actual lines look like and where a disc ends up, because they played that. In fact, they probably played it the night before, and it's 6 a.m. and they're talking about it. And I think that's necessary. I think we saw this. I don't want to cast any shade on Dustin, but over at Gatekeeper with Dustin Moreau doing the commentary last year, you could tell he is a CSGO commentator and that he has not played these courses and doesn't have that same experience. And I think that made a difference for him. Listening to Jeremy Coling and Nate and Andrew Fish and all these other guys who are out there on the course, I think is necessary for today's disc golf.
All right, Brian, what's your take on this?
I think that if anybody is discussing this, we shouldn't be looking at post-production anymore. I think we've gotten to the time where post-production is in its end as far as new ideas, new things. I don't think that's going to be quote-unquote needed as much because of our Disc Golf Network and the growing amount of companies that want to try live as well. With all that information, is it important to have somebody that's knowledgeable in the booth? Yeah. I don't really care who it is. I do care who the play-by-play, if you will, to use the NFL analogy is. The color doesn't matter to me, but the play-by-play needs to be Terry Miller. We are blessed to have Terry Miller. Everyone in the disc golf community is blessed to have Terry Miller. He has put out more content, covered more rounds, done this better than anyone. So put whoever you want on the color side. Give me Terry Miller all day, twice on Sunday.
All right, Josh, is Terry Miller the answer? Brian's hitting that one out of the park right now. What do you got? Is Terry the answer?
No, I'm not sure how that's hitting it out of the park. No, it doesn't have to be Terry Miller, and I would prefer it not be. I love the fact that he puts out as much content as he does, but usually when I watch it, I mute it. I would much rather have somebody in there who has been on the tour, has played these courses, and I don't have a problem with one guy in the booth not being a touring pro. But if we're putting all our marbles on Terry, then I'm absolutely on the other side of the table from Brian.
All right, Brian, why is Josh's take wrong?
Well, I think Josh is focusing on a single commentator. It sounds like his argument maybe is. Again, I'm going back to the play-by-play and color. I think play-by-play should be Terry. Color, I don't care. But what we do need to add is we need to add an additional person on the field, not the Brian Earhart, if you will. We need the rules expert that's out on there. We need a live mic on Robert Leonard, Jeff Jarquois, somebody like that, a live mic. We can talk to the PDGA directly and get that. We would love to see the call this past weekend on the FPO side and the MPO side when it went over the fence and slid under. We would have loved to hear that commentary as a fan.
I like that final point, Brian. I think the other stuff is personal preference stuff. You guys both agreed on the base question of, do we need somebody who's played the game or currently playing the game in the booth? You both said yes to that. So hands down, that's a yes from both of you. I think the differentiation there, Brian, I love the suggestion, and I think it's something that we're missing right now in commentary, is that on-the-ground rules expert. In other sports, it might get beaten over the head, again, a little bit too much by bringing in these rules officials all the time, because they have these fans that have been around and the sport's been around for forever, that we have our on-the-couch experts. Disc golf, we might have a couple of them, but there's room for improvement there. So Brian takes the win here in this duel. Sends us to duel number 5. Jen and Josh, you are up. Jen, you're going to be up first. Jomez has been a mainstay, producing top-of-the-line MPO coverage over the last several years. Obviously, this year they made a deal with the Pro Tour, and they're taking over FPO lead card coverage for the Elite Series, which is fantastic stuff, progressing the sport forward. However, there's been some kickback after the first couple Pro Tour events this year on social media, with people saying, hey, the FPO coverage is supposed to be same day. It's not showing up till right at midnight. And the MPO coverage that we expected to eat our breakfast to is showing up mid to late afternoon. So is this, are these complaints just keyboard warriors complaining about something, or is there actually something wrong here?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is the fruits of our labor, so to speak. We've all used the hashtag grow the sport, right? Now that we're grown, what are we seeing? We're seeing some of the areas of improvement in our community, particularly with coverage. Disc golf has expanded, and we're seeing the result in the world we live in requires an immediate gratification. I think there's a little bit of both. Our community hasn't been used to the fans fiending the way that they are now. We've seen that a little bit more over the last couple of years, but have they overextended? Possibly, or maybe they're limited on the resources that they have. We all know it's a challenge to record on the courses that aren't ball golf courses, right? It's hard to get good Wi-Fi coverage. It's hard to get good coverage in general. So I think it's good that they're playing with formatting and how they're releasing the data now, only because it's going to end up improving it. There has been a need for more FPO coverage. I think there's a lot of FPOs that are happy for that. But it's in a period of adjustment, we'll say.
All right, I like that. Josh, where are you going to go with this?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think over the last 5 years specifically, us disc golf content consumers have been spoiled rotten with the amount of content we've gotten, the kind of content that we've gotten. And also, I think the fans are probably being a little finicky about that right now. And I do think that Jomez has overextended just a little bit, mostly because of what we've talked about in the past. I think all of this is being driven by the Pro Tour and DGN. And I'm all for growing the sport, and we do everything we can along the lakeshore to do that. But I think there are some things that are happening where they're trying to grow it too big, too fast, and it's actually having some negative effects in regard to Jomez's financial stability, Jomez's scheduling, and I think it's going to continue to be a problem until we find a good solution for that, which is outside sponsorship, by the way.
I love how you brought it back to that, Josh. So again, let's get back to the root of the question here. Is Jomez's exploits these last couple weeks, and is that a result of an overextension, or are the fans' comments an overreaction? Jen?
I think you're considering spoiled on the MPO side. FPO has not been spoiled in any sense of the word, and I think the effects that we're seeing are more on the MPO side. And you're right, we are expanding, and they're trying to adjust to that. And we have to have lessons learned. If you don't have lessons learned, you're never going to improve. Is it going to suck now? Yeah, probably. But are the fans being overzealous? Probably. I think they're going to come into their own with adjusting their approach, because their previous approach has been one-sided, and I think it's important to not be one-sided.
All right, Josh. Why do you deserve to win this duel?
This is one of my pet topics that we've talked about a lot over the last couple of months. Who can disagree that we haven't had as much FPO coverage as we have MPO? Obviously, that's a problem, and I'm excited to see Jomez take that on. And I think that after a while, they will get in their rhythm, and they'll figure out how to do this better. It's the beginning of the season. It's a new model. Things are different this year. But I think, again, the overall problem is those that are pushing Jomez to go in the direction that they're going in right now. And until that gets fixed, I think as a whole, we're not going to grow as quickly as we want to.
I am going to give, this one's tough for me. I'm going to give Jen the win on this one, though. I do like your points a little bit better. I like how you backed your points up a little bit better is I guess, a better way of phrasing it. So we'll jump into the final duel here. Jen's at 2, Seth's at 2. Brian's got a chance to force a tiebreaker or give Seth the win, I guess. That's also a possibility. Final question. We've had several players switch to a new bag this year. Who's had the most success here early in the season? Brian, you're up.
All right. Well, the easy answer would be Deanna Carey, Paige Shue, Cole Redalian, Anthony Barella. But that's not the right answer. The right answer in the FPO side is Maria Oliva, and on the MPO side is Scott Withers, believe it or not. He was a longtime Discraft player, was unfortunately released from the team or went a different way. I don't know him personally. But this year, he has already got himself 3 wins, I believe. 3 wins up in his native area of, excuse me while I scroll, let's see, Oregon. He's got 3 wins, a second, a 4th, and he's come in top 30 of both of the Disc Golf Pro Tour events. Maria, on the other hand, has a first, a handful of seconds, a 4th, and has been in the top 21 of both of the Disc Golf Pro Tour events. Anthony Barella is the easy pick, Cole Redalian's sexy pick, but those are the right 2 answers. Have a great day, Seth.
All right, Seth. He teed you up.
Awesome.
What do you got?
Yeah, so not quite the right 2 answers. And I love the Scott Withers take. That being said, when you look at the pure Disc Golf Pro Tour standings, and I think those are a little bit more objective than when you're looking at like wins at local B tiers and C tiers. I love you, Scott, but like those are a little bit easier for you than coming out on tour. The answer here is James Proctor, and that's the one name that Brian didn't say. And James Proctor is currently ranked 11th on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. His 2 finishes at Waco and at Vegas 14th, Waco 10th. James Proctor is also sponsored by the same same company as Scott Withers and is coming in with higher finishes. I think that the Maria Oliva answer is the correct one on the FPO side, but on the MPO side, I'm taking James Proctor all day.
All right, Brian, you got a chance to hear who he's going with. Why is it Withers over Proctor?
Well, it's Withers over Proctor because I think, I couldn't check the stats fast enough. I think Scott scored better than what he did in the 2 Disc Golf Pro Tour events from last year already. But I'll double down again on Maria. She's the right answer. James Proctor, not a bad thing, but I think he started off real hot last year as well and then kind of cooled off. I think that's what James Proctor does.
Seth, wrap it up.
Yeah, so the reality is that regardless of how things finish after this, what we're talking about is right here, right now. And right here, right now, James Proctor is ranked higher than Scott Withers. Doesn't really matter how much Scott has improved over last year to this year, because Proctor's done the same thing in that regard, right? We weren't talking after Waco last year that James Proctor was 11th in tour standings, but he is now. And I think that's the key takeaway. At the end of the day, we're not differentiating on Maria. We both agree there. So the vote's going to come down to whether or not it's Proctor or Withers in your mind.
Seth, Brian, good takes for both of you. I think Seth kind of brought it home with the fact that Brian was scrolling mid answer. So Seth takes the win and takes the episode. Seth, you've got 1 or 2 minutes. Stage is yours. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so this is a hot take, maybe. Actually, it's probably not a hot take at all. But for all of you disc golfers out there that want to be sponsored, don't just hit up people asking to be sponsored. Like, you got to prove it. And I think that one of the things that you're going to see when you prove it is that other people will speak up for you. I had a great experience with our own Brian here, who reached out about a player that he thinks should be sponsored. And as a team manager, I would much rather hear from people that I know and trust, whether it's my team players or other manufacturer sponsors in the business who think that their player or a player should be sponsored, than some person who I've never talked to reaching out to me. And on top of that, if you think, man, I'm going to shoot my shot and reach out to you, you better have your PDGA number, a list of accomplishments, and hopefully some links to some social media. Because if I have to do all of that work myself, you're already behind the 8 ball. So that's my hot take for the week as a team manager. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of thankless work. But at the end of the day, when you get to go out and caddy for the winner of a tournament, it ends up being quite the fun job. So take it or leave it. That's what I got to say.
Thank you so much, Seth. Congrats on the win. Thank you, Jen, Brian, Josh, for joining us as well. We look forward to seeing all 4 of you back in the future. You guys at home, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week. We will see you next week. Have a good one.